Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up in the News Hour. India and Greece decide to upgrade bilateral ties to a strategic partnership after delegation-level talks between the prime ministers of the two countries in Athens. Niger authorizes Mali and Burkina Faso to send their forces into its territory in case of a West African bloc attack. Russia charges Ukraine of firing a missile towards Moscow and attacking Crimea with 42 drones. US top general says Ukraine likely to get F-16 fighter jets soon. And India's Tokyo Olympic gold medalist Neeraj Chopra qualifies for the 2024 Paris Olympics. Also enters World Championships final with a season best throw of 88.77 meters. After a successful BRICS visit in Johannesburg, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the historic city of Athens for his first ever visit to Greece. He was warmly greeted by Greek Foreign Minister Georgios Gertapridis at the airport. A packed program of interactions with the Greek leadership, business community, Indian diaspora and prominent personalities is part of the Prime Minister's day-long visit in Athens. This is the first visit by any Indian Prime Minister in at least 40 years. India's contact with its important Mediterranean partner stretches back over 2 millennia. In modern times, our ties have been strengthened by shared values of democracy, rule of law and pluralism. Cooperation in diverse sectors such as trade and investment, defense and cultural and people-to-people contacts have been bringing our two countries closer. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis held a joint press conference as well in Athens. Addressing the conference, Prime Minister Modi said that they have decided to take India and Greece relations to a strategic level.
दो पुराने मित्रों की तरह हम एक दूसरे की भावनाओं को समझते हैं और उनका आदर करते हैं। 40 वर्षों के लंबे अंतराल के बाद भारत के किसी प्रधानमंत्री का ग्रीस आना हुआ है। फिर भी ना तो हमारे संबंधों की गहराई कम हुई है, ना ही रिश्तों की गर्मजोशी में कमी आई है। इसलिए आज प्रधानमंत्री जी और मैंने भारत ग्रीस पार्टनरशिप को स्ट्रैटेजिक स्तर पर ले जाने का निर्णय लिया है। हमने तय किया है कि हम डिफेंस एंड सिक्योरिटी, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, कृषि, शिक्षा, न्यू एंड इमर्जिंग टेक्नोलॉजी और स्किल डेवलपमेंट के क्षेत्रों में अपने सहयोग को बढ़ाकर अपनी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप को मजबूती देंगे।
During the joint press conference, Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis said that they've decided to take Indo-Greece ties to the level of a strategic partnership.
We are very happy to be upgrading our relationship into a strategic relationship. We thus highlight the fact that Greece and India are in reality much closer than their geographical distance, and that they are ready to proceed side by side in dealing with the challenges of our time, especially in a period of upheaval and war in Ukraine, facts which make it even more necessary to respect the UN Charter.
For more updates, let's take you across straight to Athens. Joining us live from there is DD India's Meghna Dev. This upgradation of bilateral ties to the strategic level, the leaders elaborated also somewhat on what this would really mean. What can you tell us about that, Meghna?
Yes, Gautam, first of all, I would like you to take our viewers to the joint statement that has been issued after the bilateral delegation talks between both the leaders that has happened. You also heard the press statements from both the leaders. Definitely, looking at the joint statement, we see that it is high on trade and investment agenda when both the countries want to double the bilateral trade by 2030. So there has been a target that has been set. Besides that, there is an impetus on India-EU connectivity partnership. There is focus so that there are more direct flights from India to Greece. There is also, when we actually see that there has been broadening and deepening of bilateral engagements when we are talking about different sectors in the sense of agriculture, defense, shipping, science and technology. We also see cyberspace, education, culture and tourism on the agenda when this, and we see that mentioned in the joint statement as well. We also see a very important MOU that has been signed in the sector of agriculture, and there is going to be an establishment of a joint committee, of joint subcommittee, which will be India Hellenic joint subcommittee on agriculture, which will facilitate the sectoral cooperation in agriculture. That is extremely, that is actually one sector which has been widely discussed in a sense, we can say, in this meeting. Besides that, also, as I said, both the leaders have also agreed to encourage direct flights between Greece and India. And obviously, when we see that both the leaders are taking into account the bilateral, or we can say the historical and cultural linkages between both the countries, both the leaders have also agreed that there may be more cooperation in the preservation and restoration works of ancient sites and strengthening the cooperation within the UNESCO. So this is also what both the leaders have talked about. Another very important thing that comes, that takes place is the Mobility and Migration Partnership Agreement. So both the leaders have decided that this should be finalized as early as possible so that there is a smooth movement of workforce that, that can happen after this agreement has been signed, which is the Migration and Mobility, Partnership Agreement.
Right. And is there a roadmap as well for taking the bilateral trade, doubling it by 2030?
We can expect a briefing by the foreign secretary in in some time from now, so that we can have more idea on what is exactly the roadmap to make or to double the bilateral trade by 2030. As of now, we see the bilateral trade stands somewhere around 2,000 million US dollars, which is quite below potential. There is a lot more room for more bilateral trade to happen between both the countries. And when India definitely is looking at Greece, Greece is placed in a very strategic position when we see it is on the crossroads of Asia, Europe, and Africa. Obviously, India is also aiming at utilizing the port potential of Greece so that it can reach out to the European markets. So, as we call it, Greece also wants to become a gateway for the European markets for India. So, definitely, that is one way in which bilateral trade can be catalyzed. And in some time from now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Prime Minister of Greece are going to meet business leaders, and that is happening over lunch. I guess it might have commenced by now. So, they are meeting business leaders of both the countries, where this meeting over a lunch is happening with the business leaders. So definitely a business community and enhancing investments, enhancing more trade is what both the leaders are looking at, and engaging the business community is one way of reaching the target of bilateral doubling the trade by 2030.
Right. And this migration and mobility pact, if it is to be worked out soon, would be music to the ears of the Indian diaspora that's already there in Greece. And the PM is also having an event with them as well later in the day, isn't he?
Can you repeat your question, Gautam, please?
I was asking you about the Indian diaspora event that the PM's having later in the day.
Gautam, absolutely. Yes, yes, absolutely. That event is being awaited. We really did see in the morning how excited the diaspora was in terms of welcoming Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Athens. And now we definitely see that there are preparations that are underway at the community center where this event is going to take place. The diaspora is really eager to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and preparations have been going on since a couple of days. Exactly what we see. Definitely, the diaspora here is not as huge as we see in Australia or as we see in US, or different places. And definitely, when we talk about Greece, there are different islands, there are different places, suburbs where people live. So many people are coming from really far places to attend this community event and be a part and probably interact with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and hear his address. So definitely that is one event to look out for. And as of now, Gautam, I get an update on what Prime Minister Narendra Modi has gifted to the Greece PM. He has gifted Dokra art, which is an art one of the India's prehistoric art forms. He has gifted that to the Greece PM. Also, a Meghalaya shawl to spouse of Greece PM. That is what we get as of now. We will bring to you more details as and when we have it.
All right. Meghna, thank you so much for that update from Athens. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also commenced his visit to Greece by paying tribute at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Athens. Prime Minister Modi was also accorded a ceremonial welcome there. The monument is dedicated to Greek soldiers who sacrificed their lives during the First World War. It's located between two monumental staircases which lead to the main entrance to the Greek parliament. The tomb was sculpted between 1930 and 1932. It's also designed to serve as a connection between the modern Greek state and the country's ancient past, a connection that was part of a broader cultural and political strategy. And as Meghna informed us, India's Prime Minister on Friday held talks with his Greek counterpart, in fact, with the Greece President as well, Katerina Sakellaropoulou, at the Presidential Palace in Athens. Discussions covered shared values of democracy, success of the Chandrayaan mission, women-led development, India's G20 presidency, and ways to deepen bilateral relations. And Prime Minister Modi also talked about the success of the Chandrayaan-3 mission in his meeting with the Greek president, saying the success of Chandrayaan-3 is not only of India alone, but for the entire mankind.
एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आपका हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। चंद्रयान-3 की सफलता दूसरे भारत की या भारत के वैज्ञानिकों की सफलता ऐसा नहीं है, ये पूरी मानव जात के लिए सफलता है और पूरे मानव जात के भविष्य को गढ़ने में विज्ञान के इस प्रकार के साहस और सफलताएं बहुत बड़ी भूमिका अदा करती है। उसमें भी जिस भूभाग पर चंद्रयान-3 ने अपनी गतिविधि प्रारंभ की है, मैं मानता हूं कि उससे जो नतीजे निकलेंगे वो पूरी साइंटिफिक फैटर्निटी को और मानव जात को चंद्र के संबंध में जो उसकी जिज्ञासाएं हैं और लोग जो भावी प्लान कर रहे हैं उसमें बहुत उपयोगी हो सकता है।
And the Prime Minister was also conferred with the Grand Cross of the Order of Honor by the Greek President. Prime Minister Modi thanked the President, the government and the people of Greece for conferring the honor. He said this shows the respect of the people of Greece that they have towards India. Niger has authorized Mali and Burkina Faso's military forces to intervene on its territory in the event of an attack. This authorization hints that the junta in Niger intends to continue defying regional calls to step down. The three allies' foreign ministers said they had met in the Nigerian capital of Niamey to discuss boosting cooperation on security and other joint issues on Thursday. The West African bloc, ECOWAS, has warned that it's ready to send troops into Niger to restore constitutional order if diplomatic efforts fail. The bloc has been trying to negotiate with the coup leaders. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said at the BRICS summit in South Africa on Thursday that a military intervention by other states in Niger following last month's coup would benefit no one. Let's get you a live update from Tasim on the situation. What can you tell us after this decision to allow the forces of Mali and Burkina Faso to come onto their territory in case of an attack? Does it seem that an attack is imminent?
Well, not really, because at the moment, or as we speak right now, the president of ECOWAS Commission, Omar Torre, is briefing journalists in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, talking about the Niger situation. Torre says ECOWAS is committed to the peace and stability of Niger Republic. So yes, talking about military interference, that remains a last resort. Omar Torre says as far as ECOWAS is concerned, they reject unequivocally the position of the military junta, proposing a 3-year reign before return to democratic rule. So yes, to answer you, the ECOWAS says it is committed to peace, and violence or the deployment of military force will be a last resort. But yes, at the moment they are still having talks and engaging for dialoguing so that it doesn't get to that really.
But the ECOWAS had previously rejected the formulation that had been offered by the military junta in Niger, saying there would be a transition to democracy in 3 years' time. So what are the points of negotiation now? Have things changed where the quest for peace is concerned?
Well, still quoting Omar Torre, who is briefing the press as we speak, he says, look, ECOWAS, like I said before, is concerned about the ordinary Nigerian who is on the streets, that is not in power or in military regalia. Yes, talking about going forward as well, he says what ECOWAS is concerned about is, the regional peace generally, talking about ECOWAS. Recall that we've had military takeovers in Mali and Burkina Faso. As far as they're concerned, they don't want a repeat of that, of those experiences within the West African regional bloc, which is why they are ready to activate military force to intervene should the military junta remain defiant, holding on to power and not having President Mohamed Bazoum back to power.
All right, thank you so much for joining us with that update. Still to come on DD India News Hour, Moscow has again suspended flights at 2 major airports early on Friday following reported explosions near the capital. Donald Trump surrenders on charges of racketeering and conspiracy and is later released. Mugshot released after booking, a first for any US president.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we move any further on the show, another look at our top stories. India and Greece decide to upgrade bilateral ties to a strategic partnership after delegation-level talks between the prime ministers of the two countries in Athens. Donald Trump surrenders on charges of racketeering and conspiracy and is later released. mugshot also released after his booking, a first for any US president. And India's Tokyo Olympic gold medalist Neeraj Chopra qualifies for the final of the World Athletics Championships javelin throw final with a season's best of 88.77 meters, also qualifies for the Paris Olympics. Let's now take a look at some other stories that have been making news around the world. Now, traffic through the Panama Canal remains constrained as the ongoing drought in the region has significantly lowered the water levels. There is currently a backlog of cargo vessels in the area waiting to pass. Protests have broken out on the streets of Buenos Aires as residents demanded that the government deal with the current economic crisis in the country. Argentina is suffering from high inflation. Its current inflation rate stands at a whopping 113%. Venezuela's National Assembly has elected Elvis Amoroso as its new head of National Electoral Council. Amoroso acted as the country's Controller General before being elected into this position. The United States has recently proposed to ease sanctions against the country should free and fair elections take place. Flight operations at two major airports in the Russian capital Moscow had to be suspended early on Friday after reports of explosions. It comes after residents of the Russian regions of Tula and Kaluga reported hearing explosions in the night. Earlier this week, flights were briefly disrupted following alleged Ukrainian drone attacks. Well, DD India's Dasha Chernashova is joining us from Moscow for more on that. Dasha, what can you tell us in terms of what Moscow is saying about what seem to be attacks on pretty vital places in Moscow as well as in areas around it?
Well, indeed, the Russian Ministry of Defense has confirmed that overnight there was an attempted attack by S-200 missile against the Russian region of Kaluga. It was intercepted by the Russian air defenses. No casualties have been reported. Later, we have heard about a drone attack being thwarted by the Russian authorities also in the Kaluga region. Just to give you the sense, Kaluga region is close to the Russian capital. It is about 1 hour drive, 1.5 hour drive from Moscow. Another attempted drone attack has been perpetrated by Ukraine, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense in Crimea. That was a large-scale attack involving over 40 drones. All they have been intercepted by the Russian air defenses or jammed by the electronic warfare. And the Kremlin has commented on those attacks, saying that so far the Russian air defense systems have been working efficiently. That's according to Dmitry Peskov, Kremlin spokesman. He also has said that to make sure that there are no drone attacks, no missile attacks against the Russian territory, the Russian special military operation in Ukraine, as Moscow describes it, has to continue.
Right, and in terms of these attacks that have been escalating, really, what is Ukraine saying? Because we have in the US people saying that the counteroffensive is not making the kind of progress. In fact, Kremlin is saying that it's completely failed.
Well, Moscow is also saying that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is failing, and Moscow has been saying that for a while now. We also understand that the Russian authorities do insist that Ukraine is trying to find excuses for why this counteroffensive is failing. But again, Moscow reminds that it has the capacity to continue and to press on with the goals of its special military operation in Ukraine until they are achieved. And those attacks by the Ukrainian drones, by the Ukrainian missiles against the Russian territories are seen in Moscow as acts of desperation against the backdrop of those failing activities in the Ukrainian counteroffensive.
All right. Well, let's see what happens next. Dasha, every day brings a new update on the escalation of the conflict in that region. Thanks for joining us for the time being. Now, the United States' top general Mark Milley has said that Ukraine is likely to get F-16 fighter jets very soon. He added its counteroffensive against the Russian invasion has been going slowly and has had partial successes. He also said that Ukrainian forces are being trained intensively in various parts of Europe. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had said that he'd received pledges from Denmark and Netherlands for the delivery of F-16s.
The F-16s, that is moving forward, actually. So there's a training program in place, and they'll likely to receive F-16s here in the not-too-distant future. The Ukrainians have a significant amount of combat power remaining. This is not over yet. So I think it's, frankly, too early to say whether it succeeded or failed. It clearly has had partial success to date. Now, the speed at which the offensive is being undertaken is slower than the planners had thought.
And the United States has imposed sanctions on 13 people and certain groups who reportedly helped deport children from Ukraine. The U.S. State Department has added that they are also taking steps to impose visa restrictions on 3 Russian-installed authorities over their alleged involvement in human rights abuses of Ukrainian minors. The Ukrainian government estimates that Russian authorities have forcibly displaced over 19,500 children since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war.
Let's be clear. Russia has zero legitimate reason to suspend its participation in this arrangement. They would have you believe that sanctions have blocked their exports. That couldn't be further from the truth. They were exporting more grains than ever before and at higher prices. Russia is simply using the Black Sea as blackmail. It's playing political games. It's holding humanity hostage.
Meanwhile, the United States will begin flight training for Ukrainian pilots on F-16 fighter jets in October. Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Pat Ryder has said the training will begin in Arizona after the pilots receive English language training next month.
The Department of Defense is announcing today that the United States will soon begin training Ukrainians to fly and maintain F-16 fighter aircraft in support of the international effort to develop and strengthen Ukraine's long-term defenses. Following English language training for pilots in September, F-16 flying training is expected to begin in October at Morris Air National Guard Base in Tucson, Arizona, facilitated by the Air National Guard's 162nd Wing.
Also, as Ukraine marked its 32nd Independence Day on Thursday, the Eiffel Tower in Paris was drenched in the colors of Ukraine to mark the momentous occasion. The iconic Eiffel Tower turned blue and yellow, representing the colors of Ukraine's national flag. Ukraine declared its independence from the erstwhile Soviet Union back in 1991. For the first time in history, a former US president has had his mugshot taken. On Thursday, Donald Trump surrendered at a Georgia jail on charges of racketeering and conspiracy. Later, he posted a $200,000 bond and was released.
Donald Trump was charged on Thursday with more than a dozen felonies as part of complex criminal case arising from his efforts to overturn his Georgia loss in the 2020 presidential race. After his surrender, Trump was arrested and jail authorities took a mugshot of Trump. His mugshot was made public by Fulton County Jail after his arrest. Later, former president was released on bail. The $200,000 bond package includes standard provisions barring him from making direct or indirect threats against witnesses. Dozens of Trump supporters gathered outside the Atlanta jail. Before boarding his private plane after the booking, Trump repeated his claim that the various criminal cases against him are politically motivated.
I really believe this is a very sad day for America. This should never happen. If you challenge an election, you should be able to challenge an election. I thought the election was a rigged election, a stolen election, and I should have every right to do that. As you know, you have many people that you've been watching over the years do the same thing, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Stacey Abrams or many others. When you have that great freedom to challenge, you have to be able to, otherwise you're going to have very dishonest elections. What has taken place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. And everybody knows it. I've never had such support And that goes with the other ones, too. What they're doing is election interference. They're trying to interfere with an election. There's never been anything like it in our country before.
Justice Department officials.
Fannie Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney who filed the sweeping racketeering case, had set a deadline of Friday for Trump and the other 18 defendants to surrender. Trump and 11 others have turned themselves in so far.
Now, Donald Trump has also returned to the social media site X, formerly known as Twitter, with a post showing his mugshot from his Atlanta prison booking earlier in the day. He claimed that the prosecution he faces is politically motivated. And still to come on DD India News are...
Well, Donald Trump's mugshot is currently making its way around the world as we process this historic and unprecedented situation in the U.S. state of Georgia. And the next step for Trump and his 18 co-defendants is to actually be arraigned and enter a plea on these charges, and we expect that to happen likely the week after next. Now, the actual trial date is a bit unclear. The Fulton County District Attorney, Fannie Willis, had initially proposed a date of March 4th, which would actually be the day before Super Tuesday, which is the biggest day in the party's presidential nominating process. However, then one of Trump's co-defendants earlier asked for his trial date to be moved up to October 23rd. He has the right to request a speedy trial. So that was granted by the judge. The district attorney had initially wanted to charge Trump and the co-defendants at the same time. So we'll see how that plays out. Another option that could happen here is some of those co-defendants are trying to have the case moved to a federal court. So if that were to happen, and if Trump's case were to be moved, then the timeline from the state court would essentially become moot. Former U.S. president has shown a remarkable resilience so far to taking any sort of damage so far in the Republican nominating process from all of these legal entanglements. Back in February, before he was indicted for the first time, Trump was actually just leading Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the Republican nomination poll by just a couple percentage points. Well, fast forward to the summer, where now Trump has been indicted 4 times on numerous felony charges, and Trump is actually leading the field by more than 40%. So these charges have clearly not hurt him in any meaningful way to try and achieve his party's nomination for the presidency. Now, certainly new details could come out as these legal cases proceed, but right now, at least the will of the Republican voters appears to be that they do support Trump despite all of these legal problems that he faces.
Still to come in DD India News are...
Udaipur.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
Ma Hindi Hasti.
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such changemakers. Watch Changemakers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. And before we move further on the show, another look at our top stories. Republican candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is now the most Googled Republican candidate. An online news portal said the 38-year-old's popularity surged just in an hour after his first presidential debate. Vivek Ramaswamy is an Indian-American born in the U.S. state of Ohio. His parents are immigrants from southern India. It's also worth noting that Ramaswamy's campaign has raised $450,000 just in the first hour after the debate. U.S. Ambassador to India Eric Garcetti has said President Joe Biden loves India and that his visit to New Delhi next month will further the bilateral ties. He also says that the sale of U.S. jet engines and drones to India will be a game changer. Garcetti spoke to DD India's Ramesh Ramachandran. Take a look.
To viewers, if you will, about the forthcoming visit to India by U.S. President Joe Biden, what will be his itinerary be like?
President Biden is so excited to return to India. He's been here many times, but it's his first time as President of the United States. And building on the momentum and the friendship and the deep progress from Prime Minister Modi's visit to Washington just 2 months ago, it hasn't let up. In fact, I would say it's accelerated. We've seen superb leadership on G20 from India, not just here in New Delhi, but 60 cities for months ahead of time, which makes the job of national leaders like President Biden easy. Talking about debt, climate, women, technology, the global economy, our safety and security. You will see a lot of progress here. And I think we'll also see bilateral work between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, building on the opening of 2 new consulates in the future, reducing visa times, looking at getting trade disputes behind us and trade opportunities in front of us. These are the sorts of things I think Indians can expect that will affect everyday Indians in a positive way. But there's no question, President Biden and America loves India. This is our moment.
How quickly can India see the sale of U.S. jet engines and drones to India?
Well, I'm very excited that by the time we go to work on Monday, the period of congressional notification, if there's any objections, will have expired. We haven't seen any objection thus far, and I think that we had Republican and Democratic members of our House of Representatives here to be the honored guests at India's Independence Day at the Red Fort. It shows that India unites us. Sometimes we disagree with each other in the United States. Republicans and Democrats don't always get along. When it comes to India, we really do. And so I'm very optimistic that that will move forward. This exquisite technology, 100% that we control, shared with India, will really be a game changer. And more importantly, a peace secure for India and for the world.
Ambassador, the last time I spoke with you, you told me that 2611 accused Tahavur Rana will be extradited to India by the end of the year. Does that timeline still hold?
I'm optimistic. That will be for a judge to decide, a set of judges to decide. The final arguments will go forward from Rana's attorney in late October. We will respond in early November, but we're clear. Bad guys need to pay the price, and that extradition needs to occur.
And are we looking forward to a visit to India by the U.S. Speaker
and the leader of the Democratic Party in the lower chamber of the legislature?
They have both expressed their desire to have a historic visit. Part of that will rely on them resolving any potential budget shutdown, government shutdown.
Ambassador Garcetti, how does the U.S. look at India's singular achievement of landing a craft on the south pole of the moon? I ask you this because one, it's never been done before, and two, I'm told it's very cost effective. By way of comparison, the Indian moon mission cost $75 million. The Hollywood film Interstellar cost $175 million to make.
It's amazing.
Would this moon mission spur India-US space cooperation going forward?
No question. We used to say the sky's the limit. I think after this week, the sky's no longer the limit. I'm so happy for India. I celebrated. I was in a room full of Indians when that happened, and it reminded me of my childhood, watching the space shuttle go up for the first time, seeing, those moments are ones you remember the rest of your life. And it's so impressive that India has done this in the face of adversity, coming back and back again, doing it inexpensively and efficiently. I think it augurs incredibly well, and we can't wait to put an Indian astronaut in space on a mission next year, as we announced in June. So that'll be the next big threshold and an example of how our relationship has no limits.
And finally, Ambassador Garcetti, we are talking, meeting in the immediate aftermath of the BRICS summit in South Africa. How does the U.S. view the outcome from that summit? Also, would D.C. welcome the inclusion of Iran and Saudi Arabia in BRICS?
That's up for the BRICS nations to decide, and we support, obviously, multilateral institutions everywhere. We hope that they will always engage in the same principles that we uphold, whether it's at the United Nations or whether it's at G20, that certain rules keep the peace, certain rules ensure our mutual prosperity, that we should not set up groups that are about what you're against or who you're against. This idea that there's the West and the rest just isn't true. Look at India and the United States. Friendships are formed east-west, north-south, and when we do form those friendships, those are the ones that can change the world in the deepest way possible.
And now let's get to some sports as well. Tokyo Olympics champion Neeraj Chopra qualified for the final of the men's javelin at the World Athletics Championships. Neeraj Chopra threw his season-best 88.77 meters in his first attempt after going 17th in Group A of the qualification in the men's javelin at Budapest's National Athletics Center in Hungary. It was well above the automatic qualification mark of 83 meters. Chopra had come agonizingly close to becoming India's first world champion in any athletics discipline at the 2022 World Championships in Oregon, but had to settle for a silver medal after finishing second to Grenada's Anderson Peters. Meanwhile, Chopra also booked his place for the Paris Olympics 2024 as he breached the automatic qualification mark of 85.5 meters for the 2024 Games. That's all we have for the moment in this edition of News Hour, but do keep watching all the updates right here on DD India. Thanks for watching.